no?
Insufficient data to formulate a reply.
What?
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome again to the podcast. I am Steve, of course, as always, joined by...
Devin.
Joe.
And that's it.
Okay.
We got rid of our
Nobody else.
intern.
Yeah, the intern didn't work out.
Turns out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it turns out he had a visa problem. So, as always, this week we have another mystery for you. Today we're going to talk about the disappearance of Ben McDaniels. And Ben disappeared after he entered he was diving, and he disappeared after he entered a underwater cave on the 18th of August, 2010.
Oh, and he never came back out.
And he never came back out,
Well,
that we know of.
Yeah.
he was never seen again.
He was never seen again. Now, if you are at all A, claustrophobic, or B, afraid of the water, or worse, both, you're going to get the bejesus scared out of you with this story.
Yeah.
So just warn you up ahead.
Deep water.
Deep water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully none of our listeners have rabies.
Oh, good point.
That's so weird, but I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally get that. But weird.
We need to stop
Yeah.
doing the podcast because you're understanding my logic all of a sudden. It's not
yeah.
good.
No, it's creepy.
Time to go our separate ways.
Yeah.
Well, so how does this story go?
Well, before we get into the story, actually, this is a listener suggestion.
What?
So I do want to say thank you to both Eden and Emily. They are currently the only ones listed as suggesting it.
Thanks,
if anybody
guys.
else,
Thank you very much.
If anybody else suggested it and we forgot to put you on the list, sorry about that.
Yeah, but
We're
this was
busy.
a great story. It's a wild ride. You two know I've been working on this for a month or more now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
good story. So taking it from the beginning. Ben McDaniels was a 30-year-old man. He was originally from Tennessee. And the year 2009 was a really bad year for Ben. He got divorced, which I imagine took a lot of his things. His business went under, which I'm sure took a lot of his things as well.
Usually works that way.
And then he lost his home, which would have taken one of his big things.
Yeah.
So he had a really bad year. This was all in
say.
one single year.
Yeah, and he had some tax problems too.
Well, yeah, the business going under, I think it was a construction business, if I remember
It
correctly.
was.
I remember,
And when
yeah.
it failed, he had a tax bill between the state of Tennessee and the feds of somewhere around $50,000,
It's a lot of
which is a
money.
hefty bill.
Yeah.
So he didn't really know what to do, so doing what a lot of people do, he moved back in with his parents. His mom and dad were very gracious, and they took him in. And after a while, they said, well, listen, you need to kind of figure your stuff out. You need to get your act together. Tell you what, and as they called it, why don't you take a sabbatical? Why don't
From
you...
life.
A sabbatical from unemployment?
From life.
Yeah.
From
Yeah.
life, actually. It's okay. They have a home in Florida. It's
Second home.
Yeah, their second home. It's in Santa Rosa. It was a condo, if I remember correct. And they said, go to the condo, live in Florida. We'll pay your expenses. We'll cover your living costs. And I imagine they gave him money to, spending cash.
Yeah, that's nice of them.
Absolutely.
These people had some money, though.
They did have money.
Do.
Or they
They
do have money,
Yeah, they're
excuse
still
me.
alive. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Santa Rosa, just to spare you from having to look at Google Earth, it's on the Gulf Coast of Florida.
Oh,
Yeah, where
as-
the condo was.
Yeah, it's not on the Atlantic coast.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes. So yeah, Ben, okay,
What the heck, yeah.
Why not?
Be hard to turn that down.
It
Yeah, really.
would. So he went to Florida, and while he was there, he began to indulge an old hobby, which was scuba diving. From the stuff that his family has put out, Ben began diving at the age of 15. So he seems to have been an experienced diver. He wasn't a professional, but he was an amateur diver.
Yeah, and I don't have a sense of how frequently that continued. When he
I
was
don't
in
either.
Florida, he was definitely diving like all the time. That was pretty much all he was doing. It seemed like, and it seemed like when he was a kid, he really enjoyed it. So he kind of got a chance.
Maybe he picked up an old hobby.
But I don't necessarily have the sense that this is something he'd been doing avidly the entire time.
I would not
kinda-
disagree with that at all.
And a place like Tennessee, it might be tough to find good places to go. Because I know people around here who are scuba divers, and there's really not much of any place to scuba dive if you live in Florida.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, deep lakes are what really make good or beautiful underwater landscapes, or what you're after, interesting things. So I understand why he might not have done it so much, because you don't want to
Yeah.
just jump in the river and scuba dive.
Yeah.
No.
And not so fun.
Yeah. Well, also like a waste of resources.
Yeah.
If you can snorkel in it, you should just snorkel in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Ben, he's scuba diving, and he evidently didn't like diving in salt water, which I can't hold against him.
Saltwater rashes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna take a little physical toll on you. Plus the buoyancy issue.
I was just gonna say the buoyancy issue.
Yeah, Ben was
Yeah.
not a small guy. I think Ben was like 6 foot ballpark, which would, and I think he was something like 180, maybe
I thought he was
200 pounds.
Yeah.
I thought he was 210.
Is it
thought
210?
210.
Okay, I knew that he wasn't a skinny guy by any means. So, but he didn't like to go there. So he liked to freshwater dive. So what's he do? He finds a place near him called Vortex Spring because it's freshwater.
Beautiful.
It's absolutely beautiful.
And it is fresh.
For those who are going to pull a Joe and go to Google Earth and look for Vortex Springs, it's just outside of Ponce de Leon, Florida, so it wasn't too far away from where he lived. And as Devin said, it's really pretty. I mean, it's a giant, it's a natural spring, so it is cool water upwelling out of the earth. I think it's 68 degrees.
Yeah, that's not really cool in my book.
Well, when it's 100% humidity and 100 degrees out,
Well, so it's
that's
like cool
fantastic.
in a nice way,
Yes.
right? We're not talking Oregon coast cool.
Correct.
Right.
It is very nice to swim in, and in fact, its main draw is for people to swim in it. They've got zip lines and stuff like that. I mean, it looks like a fun place to go.
Oh yeah, I'd like to go. But and I'm sure the water was just all fresh and clear because it kept getting changed out. I mean, it would upwell from the aquifer and then overflow out the
off.
sun.
And
You know.
that is
Yeah.
exactly why it is
Yeah.
so popular with divers, because open water divers can go there. The water temperature is consistent. The current is gentle. It's consistent but gentle, and therefore it's not dirty. There's lots of aquatic life to check out. So it's really, really interesting. And let's keep talking about the cave, because there's a couple of things that I want to go over, one of which is the shape of the cave. So the Vortex Springs, if you think about it, it's a giant hole in the ground.
There's a big basin.
It's 50 to 60 feet deep, which equates to about 15 to 16 meters. So it's fairly deep, a ways down. And if you look at it in profile, if you look at it, there's maps available.
Which you should look up because we're not ever going to be able to describe it well enough.
No, but it almost to me from the side looks like a semi-deflated pastry bag. You know, that thing that you decorate cakes with? Because it's kind of triangular, and then it zigzags back and forth, and it's really skinny. Devin's laughing, but she gets it.
I do.
She totally
unfortunately.
gets it.
Yeah.
So it goes down for quite a bit. Nobody knows how deep is the appropriate way to say that. We know basically how deep it is,
But it gets too skinny at the back.
Correct.
What they need to do is like dress up a small child in a wetsuit and with tanks and everything and send them through that skinny part.
I think you're supposed to not do that.
Oh, is that against the rules?
I think yes.
Oh.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy, I know, Joe, but
Oh, wow. Okay.
okay. For the length of the cave, we know that the cave is over 1,700 feet long, which, again, for our folks that are
The
not
uninitiated.
on this is the same measurement system, it's 518 meters long.
At least.
At least.
But
that's
more.
it's probably farther, but that's as far as anyone has gone that we know of. And that number, by the way, is self-reported. It's from a pretty reliable source, but it's self-reported for the distance. If anybody's ever gone into a cave, as we were talking about, they get harder and harder to go into because they get smaller and smaller as they go. They get narrower.
Quite often.
And this cave is no different. As it dives down, the walls expand and contract and change shape, but they generally continually get closer and closer together.
They call them restrictions, I think is what they call them. I'm doing
I
this
think
totally
that's
from
correct.
memory. I'm sorry.
Also bottlenecks. For squeezes.
Bottlenecks. So it's like, it's a wide open cave, and then there's this like part that you have to squeeze through, and then it opens up again.
And it's narrow, and that can be horizontally or vertically.
Or both.
Or both,
Yeah. I mean, there are caves near us called the Ape Caves. which do this. If you've ever been in any cave, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
There's not Ape Cave. There's not too much of that though. It gets
At the
bigger.
very end.
Oh, at the very end. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another one that's only a couple of miles away from there called Little Red River Cave.
Yeah.
Have you been there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a gated cave.
Yeah.
But
But
did you go all the way to the end?
no.
Yeah, you didn't really.
No.
Oh, okay. Now when you get it goes downward, and it's more difficult than Ape Cave, but it keeps going downward, and there's some climbing and stuff involved. And as you get down towards the end, water starts coming in because you go below the water table, and so there's water dripping from the ceiling and running down the floor and everything. And then you finally get to this end, and it's just a lake.
Yeah.
It's like it ends in water.
Which may continue.
Oh yeah, so if you put scuba gear on and went down that, I'm not about to, but if you wanted to, you could see how far that thing goes. But I had my creepiest cave experience in there one time. I was caving with 3 friends, and we got to the end, and then we turned around and started heading back for the entrance. And I was bringing up the rear, and suddenly, way back, and this is like actually a distance away from the end of the cave, and suddenly I heard this thud coming from behind me in the cave, and I stopped and I looked. Never found out what it was. Definitely, I was looking over my shoulder a little bit more than I normally would be.
Like footsteps thuds?
Like something heavy dropped.
Oh, like one thing dropped?
Yeah, like something, and kind of something.
The look on Devin's face explains
I don't like
it all.
Yeah, it was
She
just,
doesn't
it
like
was a
that
real
at all.
soft, just sort of a way off in the distance kind of thud, and I said,
I don't like that at all.
I don't like that at all.
It was
Choopy.
Choopy.
Yeah.
Totally the Chupacabra.
It could have been. I somehow lived through it.
Yeah, you did. Well, back to Vortex
Oh yeah.
Springs.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so at the end, or the farthest reach that we know of, the cave is only about 10 inches high. It's 25 centimeters, which is really, really, really small.
Especially if you got a bunch of gear on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about the diving and styles that are required, but people are squeezing themselves through these cracks while carrying their oxygen supply. So it's not something to be taken lightly, and it is definitely something that you need to know how to do before you do it.
Oh, yeah.
Better still, just don't do it.
Well, we've read enough, I know all of us have read enough stories of people getting lost in caves, some of whom were lucky enough to be found alive. And this is cave diving, not just people lost in caves that are filled with air.
Yeah. It's scary
Yeah,
stuff.
it's dangerous.
Crazily dangerous. I think the only way I would do it, I'd take some fluorescent green cord with me or something like that, so I could just run a line the whole way.
Well, cave divers do typically run a cord.
lines, yeah.
They tend to
good
run a
idea.
cord behind them so they can turn around and easily retrace their path out, because it's very
Good
easy
idea.
in a pitch black environment to lose your way.
Yeah.
And especially if your light breaks or something like
So,
that.
anything like that.
Yeah.
Now, for Vortex Springs, what they've done is there was in the 1990s, there was a string of people who drowned in the cave, got lost, ran out of air, and drowned. And so the state said, we're going to shut you down probably. So what the owners of Vortex Springs did is about 300 feet in, they put in a gate. And that gate it's a keyed gate. If you present identification and certification saying, I can cave dive, they will give you the key and let you in. Otherwise, it's meant to stop people from going into the cave and getting lost and dying. Now, how effective that gate is, it's not really high tech. It looks like a bunch of pieces of rebar that are jammed into the stone and happens to have a lock and a hinged gate on it.
You know, my sense of it was that it is more to discourage than to actually stop people. I think that if you're a diver and you're kind of inexperienced and you're just thinking, oh, we'll just go to this cave, blah, 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 and you encounter a thing that looks like that.
And there's a stop sign, and there's this sign that's got the Grim Reaper on it, right
Yeah,
Yes.
and, instead of just the sign, which would be pretty easy to just kind of
Ignore. It's funny, somebody put a stop sign down here.
Yeah, I think it's more meant to be like that symbolic, hey, don't go past here unless you want to die.
Well, yeah, the problem with the gate is it is easy to bypass. Or it is not difficult to bypass, I should say. I wouldn't say it's easy, but people have been known to get around.
Well, there's a video. Actually, there are a couple videos by this this guy that I watched, and I just wanted to bring it up real quick.
Actually, let me do real quick. I just want to finish just 2 little bits of detail about the cave, and then we can talk about that because that's really important and interesting. But the only other thing that I wanted people to know about when it comes to the cave itself is that the depth of the cave that we know is around 150 feet deep. That's underwater, which would equate, again, that's 45 meters. And that's a significant number because divers who tend to go to 130 feet or below typically have to breathe not just straight normal gas mix of what's in the atmosphere, regular air mix. They've actually got to do special gas mixtures, and that's to help stave off things for
Like
decompression
the bends.
issues,
Yeah.
the bends, exactly.
Yeah, and I've been told that most divers actually always turn around at 100 feet.
Right.
Yeah, they do.
130 is the depth that you can go.
That's the max, but if you want a safety cushion, you
Correct.
want
Yeah. For a safety cushion, it's somewhere in that range. But that's the bottom. And
Yeah.
after that, you should be. If you don't
Well, you
want
don't
to
have
kill
to.
yourself.
You don't have to.
If
You
you don't
might-
want to take
and you
that
might
chance,
survive.
yeah. And then you were going to talk about the gate. I know because you were looking at the video.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up a little bit. There's some really, really interesting videos that you should watch if you can stand to. It's a little, it's a little creepy. I was telling you guys that I have developed a new fear. But one of these videos, it's not totally clear what's happening, but in one of them, it was filmed by a guy named Nick. He has a diving partner, and they do these deep water cave videos just all the time. They have a bunch at Vortex Springs. One of them is Nick showing how easy it is to get over the gate. And it doesn't take him but a minute. There's a little spot where you have to push your tank in before you, and then you climb over, and then you put your tank back on. And he does it a couple times. But it's really interesting.
It's very easy.
It looks very easy.
Once you know how to do it, yeah.
It looks very, very easy to me.
It looks very, very easy to get caught on that thing and drown. But
Yeah, it would be pretty easy to snag something on it too.
yeah, that would suck.
Yeah, this is not something that we're saying lightly to just go do.
Oh,
we're
yeah,
just saying
please
that
don't.
this is please don't.
Yeah,
this
we
is
don't
just
wanna-
this is from the videos we've seen from that time.
It's possible.
And I haven't heard anything if the gate's ever been upgraded.
Yeah, I suspect it has, but I don't know.
I would hope so.
Probably since then.
Yeah, so, that's super interesting, and I have more about the videos that
Yeah, you
this
do.
guy's posted later, but I'll talk about that when it's relevant.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds perfect. So let's get back to the story because that's enough about the cave itself.
Yeah.
And there are maps available on the internet, so if you want to go look at one of those,
We will probably even post a link. to
it
one.
might be in one of the links. Absolutely.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So Ben could have been diving at Vortex Spring for up to 4 months.
He probably was.
He probably was because he moved into his parents' house in Florida in April of that year, and so I imagine not too long after that, I'm going to guess several weeks after that, started diving.
And he was kind of a regular around there. I thought
He was a total regular.
They were
They
very
knew him.
familiar.
They
yeah.
knew him. He was there almost every day. Absolutely. But what he did that is a giant no-no from everything I know about diving and everything I've ever read about diving is he was solo diving.
I know. Even above ground caving, you really don't want to do that alone.
No, because if something
Pretty much
goes
any
wrong,
kind of adventuring you don't want to do alone.
Yeah, not
no,
a great
you
idea.
don't. It's a no. You always have your dive buddy. You always go down with somebody else. But according to accounts that came out after the fact, Ben was either a little bit unapproachable, maybe came off as a jerk, or people have described him as overconfident, and so maybe that came through in a negative way. Somebody just read that wrong, and so he never made a friend to be his dive buddy.
I almost wonder if the overconfidence really kept people from wanting to be his dive partner in that it read as reckless.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily want, not just cocky, but genuinely reckless. You don't want to have a dive partner who's always saying, hey, let's break the rules and do all these things, and I'm not as trained as I should be, but we're going to do this thing anyway. That's not what you want from a dive partner. You want somebody that you're very confident in their abilities, I assume.
He did seem to come off, by some of the stuff that I've read and watched, he said that his skills were much more than they were. in terms of his experience, because there's a movie that we'll talk about where he was trying to pass himself off almost as a dive instructor, which he was in no way, shape, or form qualified to be.
He wanted to be.
He wanted to be
He
one.
did, he wanted
probably
to be
could have
that.
been one sooner or later.
But the point is that he was acting as if he was one, and I imagine that for people who knew what was going on, that was really off-putting. So that worked against him. That absolutely did not. That behavior didn't work in his favor.
Probably not.
Whether that's what he did or not, I don't know.
Oh, well,
but
you know,
the point is, he went in by himself.
Yeah, you never know. I didn't know Ben, obviously.
No, nor did I.
He had only been there for 4 months, so he maybe didn't have enough time to really meet people, or maybe